Children of Lear, that's the sculpture that got you a lot of publicity back in the 80s.
That was the piece that the artist began to call me the Mickey Mouse artist. And how that came about was Ned Brennan, the chairman or wherever he was of the arts committee for the corporation, Dublin Corporation. He was the arts committee chairman, and he said this himself. He'd never been at a play in his life, or he was at one play then, I believe, and he walked out because we're using contraceptives. He was at, and he criticised a painting that they bought it, and then he went to see it, and then he criticised it. And when my piece came up, he said, "That's the Mickey Mouse piece. It's like a Mickey Mouse piece, right?" And the Jewish fella, Briscoe, he turned around and said, "Some Mickey Mouse piece is bigger than a double-decker bus." And I got a lot of publicity on that. And I have done an interview with Peter McNiff. Peter McNiff, after the news, they used to be on News Roundup or something like that, Peter McNiff. And of course, when you do an interview with people on television and like that, they have a list of what they're going to ask you. And he turned around out of the blue and said, "Well, what do you think of Ned Brennan?" So I didn't know what to say, so I just told him exactly. I said, "Well, Ned Brennan is entitled to his opinion. He's entitled to his opinion where he says he's a citizen too, the same as everybody else. And if any artist puts a piece up, if he's not worth his salt, he shouldn't put it up if he doesn't accept criticism." And I turned it completely around. And then in the heat of the hunt, what happened then was Ned Brennan produced an article in one of the Sunday papers, sitting beside that piece that used to be facing the education department off Summer Hill there. The education department was there, faced the cathedral. And he sat in front of that talking about this piece of Michelangelo or somebody done it, and this is what he called art, But I wasn't interested in what Ned Brennan was saying. Well, this is what anybody says. They're entitled to what they say. Everybody's entitled to what they say about it. If you can't put a piece of work out there and get constructive criticism, not just criticisms that's saying, "What would you know about it?" What would anybody know about anything? So that I got great thing, and I tell you, there was a couple of times there was the things on the television, and they turned around and called it, "Do you think Mickey Mouse artists must have done this?" And the lads in Temple Bar were saying to me, "God, you're getting great publicity out of that piece of work."
And the actual sculpture, then it was something that you made in Arklow at a sculpture symposium.
Yes, that was the first sculpture symposium we had in the country, I believe.
1983.
83, yeah, and I was asked to go down and do it because you had to work with the machinery. And I had the boilermaker's card, a construction worker, boilermaker's fabricator. So they allowed me, and I knew the tittles. I knew some of the tittle people who owned the foundry or owned the place, because they were shipbuilders. Everybody worked in the ships, and the ship used to come into the dockyard. We often talked to the tittle fellas, men that owned the company. They were just ordinary fellas, I presume, But they would always talk to us, about. They used to use coaster boats, not sea-going, ocean-going vessels. We were just local things, go to England and back and that type of thing. So we knew them quite well. I knew them quite well. I knew some of the lads quite well. So when I went in, I was able to use the machinery. But they wouldn't let the other lads use the machinery because in case something happened to them. They weren't insured. But I could use the machinery, the burning gear and so forth, etc. And you see, I wanted to make something new. I wanted to make something different from the run-of-the-mill of what we have in art, And you see, this is why they talk about an artist when he's dead. He's thinking ahead. He's not thinking of the present. He's thinking of ahead. He's letting his thoughts wander. I mean, I don't want to say it, but the whole thing about art is someone's got to go along and say, "What is this?" Like I was asked to do a piece in an art, and I wasn't satisfied with what they want, what they tell you they want. They shouldn't be asking artists. They should say to them, "There's something, produce something for us." I mean, they wouldn't say that to Henry Moore, we want this. He'd say, yeah. There was one time when I believe Picasso was asked, this fella came to Picasso and said, I want you to paint me on a white horse, you know, chariot or whatever. And Picasso said, you know what you want, will you do it? You know, I'm not saying I'm Picasso, but what I'm saying to you is that you should give an artist the right to do this, to explore what he's doing, thing, not just tell him what to do.
You went to this sort of symposium in Arklow. This was a chance for you to make a really large steel.
Oh, this was a big
sculpture.
piece. This was a big piece.
Can you describe it, like exactly what it was? It was called the Children of Lear.
It was called. It was actually there were swans. In my estimation, there were swans. So when you looked at them there, each time you looked at one had wings, but that was the wing of another. That was the body of another one. When you looked the other way, that was the body, and the other wing, the other body was the wings of the. It was that way. So you went around in a circle, and a fella told me one time. He said, you know, he said that it reminded him of the Vikings. And I said, how come that? Because when the Vikings were fighting people at sea, they put the heads of the boats together in a circle, so they wouldn't be individual. They put them all together in a circle. And he said every time he went by, he told about the Vikings. He was a fellow who was interested in that type of thing, you know. But it was a great experience. It was the only time I got an experience. Oh no, later on I got an experience to do something big, and that was the piece for Hungary on the Daniel. That was what I done. But that was the first big piece. And when the fellas seen it, they were looking and saying, "My God, Joe, what are you doing?" But you see, then again, they had a laser machine that cut all. I do the drawing, and they were able to cut it out and put it in the computer and bring it out. Otherwise, it wasn't hand done. It was done by machinery. As such, the cutting out, you know. So, and I could put it up and down with a back actor, as we call it, a lorry, just the small crane you have in an ordinary lorry, and I bolted it all together, you know. And I put my hands all over it to show they couldn't, because it was outdoor. And if you're putting something outdoor, the public is going to put their hands on it, the kids are going to rub it, so you have to make sure it's not sharp.
It was put up for an exhibition at the East Link Bridge.
It was up on the East Link Bridge. Yeah, that's what it was. It was very interesting. It was very, very large piece, you know, very sturdy. It didn't need to be bolted because the way the legs were, the way it was, the area in which it covered on the ground was very big, so it couldn't be blown over. It was very strong. Because I did, working in that type of industry and working in shipyard, and I worked in shipyards, I worked in tunnels, I worked in all that type of stuff. You have to, when you're putting something outside, you have to make sure that it's going to stand up. You just don't make it so, you know, you have people touching it, wind coming at it. It has to be developed like a house. It has to be able to stand. The
Children of Lear sculpture in the Garden of Remembrance. I
got that.
That was a work that you admired, wasn't it?
That's by
Oisin Kelly.
Well, I mean, that's what they want. That's what Oisin done. I wouldn't do that. You know, you see, artists should differ. You can't keep copying, but we all do stand on one another's shoulders. Like that piece I done, Children of Lear. Some people said it was like Van Cusey. You know, things like that. You always get people saying about pieces of work you do. People who are uninterested in art will always see something in a piece of work. You know, like there's a piece inside there I'm going to show in this next exhibition. Like Giacometti, because I had these pieces and I put them together. Actually, the bits of other pieces of work that came together, I put them together because I could see it in it. Because I started out with scrap metal. So when I see things, I see them going together in my mind, you know. But I do design, or they do make things for areas that I think they should be there, you know. And you keep making. You don't stop. You never stop, you know. And you never make the same thing over and over again. It becomes boring. It becomes a job, and that's why I left the studio. It became a job. It became going in. I had to go into work as such, without creating. I had to go into work and say, I got to do something today, whether I wanted to do it or not. That's why I moved home to my own studio at the back of the house, you know.
And with the Children of Lear sculpture, that was one that you offered to donate to Dublin Corporation for Fairview Park.
Yes, I did, for Fairview Park, and that's when they came up with the idea of saying it's the Mickey Mouse piece. Tony Gregory wanted to put it. Tony Gregory said, "Yeah, I'll put it forward," and that, so forth, etc. And then you see, because they refused me, they voted against it, I got the family piece. The family piece was to go on the North Strand from the bombing. And somebody objected to go on the North Strand. I don't know why. So the next place was Fairview Park. And that was the last piece of work, I think, something going to a park. You know? At that time, they weren't putting things, you were putting... So that was good, because I liked the Fairview Park, because I wrote a poem about it too. As a kid, we used to sit up on the hill, my mother and father, listen to the band. We had a bandstand there after the war, I presume it was, in the 50s. And musicians used to come and play Celtic music, you know, and I liked that, you know. And not alone that, the kids that were, at the time, going back to 60s, well, 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s, I was with Belvedere football team. The kids knew me and looked at the piece, you know. And even the local kids now come and talk to me about it. One or two of them ask me about it, how it made it and all that, you know. That's interesting art. So I like that. I like that thing, you know. And again, again with the one, I like when, I'm not saying ordinary people, but people you don't expect to be fond of art, coming and talking to me about it. And I talk to anybody about art. I mean, I'm not an artist. I'm just a walker. That's I presume I may say, you know. Don't only just walk this name, taking it away from people. I'm just an ordinary fella. Walked hard, and had mad ideas, I presume. My mother used to say that, you had mad ideas, you know. But that was the way it was. I mean, when I was growing up, I wanted a little extra bit of clothes and the things like that. That's an artist, you know.
Mm. And I suppose the idea of putting a 15, 16 foot steel sculpture in Fairview Park.
And when my wife said, "That's not coming home to the garden." Because, you know, I have stuff in the garden. And I liked when the kids came. I really did, in a sense. And I made little pieces. They took them away. People took them away. I hope they put them in their own gardens. But I stopped making the smaller pieces. But, you know. But that's the first thing she said. "Well, that's not coming home." It was stretched in the two gardens.
I have the quotes that you were referring to there. Well, at the time that you offered to donate it to the corporation for Fairview Park, Tony Gregory described it as an interesting and thought-provoking sculpture.
Yeah.
And then your friend Councillor Ned Brennan from Fianna Fáil, he said the greatest Mickey Mouse effort of all time.
Yeah.
And there was a newspaper interview with you back then where you said, "It's an abstract of the Children of Lear by Oisin Kelly, which is in the Garden of Remembrance in Parnell Square. If you were to compare both works and weren't dismissive of art, you'd see the similarities. He, Councillor Brennan, is entitled to his opinion, and I don't take offence at what he says. People walk through Fairview Park to look at the trees, so why can't they have an opportunity to look at sculptures?"
Yeah, that's what I said. I remember I said something like that. I do say things like that when I get going, you know, in a sense. But there's not enough of abstract art. There's not enough of art around. I look at buildings the same way. Buildings are art. We should be consulted about the outside of a building, the public, because we're looking at it. We're looking at it. Like these fellas with these beards, these ugly looking beards. We're looking at their face. They're not looking at it. It's our property outside. Like when I was in Holland and I went to Amsterdam and all the places, there's buildings there from way back. There's buildings with crooked roofs on them. You know, they don't change them because that's the people outside. But inside there could be computers and all that type of stuff working. You know, we're changing everything. We're changing our whole way of life in a sense. But why should we look at bloody glass menagerie? And that's what they are. They're all glass boxes. Why not? And we have so much computers now to design and shapes And they have to make these shapes, designs outside buildings, and how buildings should be shaped. Right? Now, I mean, even though I have no objection to that, as we say, the pole in O'Connell Street, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's something different. It's something, you know what I mean? Abstract. You look at it and there's a conversation about it. Why is it there? Like, the gasometer was pulled down. And when that was going up, I believe my father was saying to me, when that was going up, that everyone was saying it was an ugly looking piece of work and all like that. And then when it was coming down, there was an argument over the way we want to keep it because it's a symbol. Same way with the stilts on the ESB. You know what I mean? Oh, they're terrible looking objects. But now we're going to take them down. People don't want them taken down. Because it's our history, it's our culture in a sense. It's something you look at. And that's what's wrong. And you see, there's too many old men in charge of things. And I can say that because I'm 87. There's too many old men in charge of things. That's what's wrong. Too many old men in charge of everything in the country, in government and everything else. Way too many old men. Way too many old men driving cars. That's my friend.
So speaking of old men in charge of things, then just to finish up with Ned Brennan, his son was actually
his son was in school with my son, and I think once or twice he came to the house. Nice man, you know. I mean, I have no objection to that, but people began to attack him, and the funny thing. There was an exhibition on down in Glasnevin. At the end of Glasnevin, there was a pub down there at the end of Glasnevin, over the hill there in Glasnevin. And a pub. And we went to this exhibition and we couldn't get a drink in the pub. There was Chevron wine and stuff, so we came to the bar to get a drink, you know. And I said to this fella, I couldn't get a drink. Your man wasn't serving us, you know. Said to this fella, any chance of getting a drink here? He said, James, I can't get a drink here. And I come in here every night. All these bloody arty-farty fellas, he said, in his artists are in here. He said, oh, I said, is that? He said, are you one of them? I said, I am. He said, you know what? He said, my son was looking at Peter McNiff after the news, you know. He said, and I said, put that thing off. No, he said, I want to listen to this fella. He said, he worked in the dockyard and he's an artist. So I said to him, I looked at his hand and I said, you're a fitter. How do you know that? All the fitters had one finger, top of a finger gone. I don't know what that happened. You know, pulling out things in cars, brake liners or something, kept their fingers, you know. All had something wrong with their fingers and their hands. And his hand was filthy, black. Nails were filthy with oil and things like that. I said, how do you know that? I said, look at your hand. I said, you want to be a fitter too, do you? Oh, well, it's a good job. He said, but that fella out of East Wall, he said, he's a good lad. He said, he's a worker like us, you know. I said, yeah. So I said to him, he's a proper artist, he said, because he worked for us before he started playing this bloody game, he said. So I said, that's me. He said, what? That's me. I said, that was me, Joe Moran. What? Give me, here. And he got one of the beer mats, took the top off it. He said, write your name there to Paddy from Joe, my pal. I'll show this young that I know you. That's the truth. You know, I came across him.
That all came from the children of Lear.
That all came from the children. Great. You know, for years we were saying something that Mickey Mouse artist, you know.
And can you tell me then about how the sculpture ended up in Waterford? Because it ended up being put outside the Liz Duggan shopping centre in the 80s.
Waterford, yeah. Well, it was for sale and they came along and bought it, you know what I mean? Some of the companies bought it. That's what it was. Some of the companies bought it. I don't know exactly. Green Property Company, I think it was. They came and said, and I got a transfer down and put it. And as I said, I put it up in 2 hours, 3 hours, because it was bolted. You know what I mean? The way I had designed it. Because I designed it so the same way as I would have designed something that was putting up something for a factory or something. You know what I mean? Some held together. So I knew how to do it. So myself and this fella in the truck just put it together. No problem. Just put the bolts in it. That's, you know, 'cause that's what I worked at. You know what I mean?
And it was something like you had to prove that it wasn't dangerous for children.
I done that. I got the fellas out I got the director or manager or somebody out for the thing, and I said to him, look, no one can say about scratching that cutting their hands or anything like that, and I done it. And there was one point where it was joined together, and I said, you can't get up on that. No kid can, unless someone lifts them up to sit up on it. You know what I mean? I done all that. I done all that. Yeah, I made sure that wouldn't happen, because that would happen, and so a kid would get up and fall off and say, oh, that's. You shouldn't be. You have to make these things like that. I do. Other people don't. Other fellas say to me, you're mad, and I don't,
And so you just went down with no ceremony, no fuss?
Oh, no ceremony. No. They just went down one ceremony. That was the end of it. It was just, said we'd be down on the Monday or wherever it was. We ordered your man and got the stuff and got it away, and went down early in the morning time. Well, I mean, we left here about 7. And we're coming home about 5. 6 o'clock at night,
Where was it at that time? Was it in storage?
It was it was in Waterford. It was in
Arklow, was it?
Arklow. We'd already picked it up the night before and brought it up, You see, it was actually supposed to be, the force, when I made the force, it was to be welded. But then when I knew that I couldn't get a welding machine out in the field or wherever it was going, I'd redesigned it with these connections. Right? Drilled the holes in them, got the connections. Tillers let me go back and do that. Use their machinery to do that. And I redone it so it joins together.
Did you ever go back and see it in Waterford?
I went down to see it in Waterford. I seen it one time. Belvedere football team was playing down in Waterford, and I went down to see it. It was there in this round circle outside, up at the back of the Waterford iron foundry. That's where it was. You came in, it was at the back of that. But we were playing further down. I went up to see it in another part, Waterford. The Belvedere kids were playing. I went down with them, and I went up to see it. Yeah.
Did it have your name anywhere, like on a plaque or anything?
I was just JM. All I use is JM. That's all. There was no plaque, but all I use was JM. I might have just welded on the side of it. All I ever use is JM,
Look, I've been looking at old photographs outside the shopping centre, and it was there, that sculpture was still there as late as 2009, but it's disappeared since then.
I want people to think. I want people to develop it also as they look at it. Even with the paintings, the drawings, I want people to develop what they're looking at. I don't finish it for them. They finish it in their mind, but it's supposed to be. And if they like it, the whole thing is that people are buying names and not looking at the piece of work. I do unique pieces. I don't do multiples. Don't do multiple. I do unique pieces, which is, I see an artist can do 9 pieces and it can be called art. After that it becomes a commodity. Who knows?